All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite dark sorcerer here. And tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about the beliefs and symbolism. This is probably going to be a short video, but I think that it really needs to be said and things that really need to be put forth. You get on social media, for an example, such as Facebook, and you get into the groups. You have so many different symbols that are now being associated with Satanism. Okay. But it's not just about Satanism. I mean, when you look at every single tradition, these symbols are a part of them. It's not just Satanism. I mean, you consider one of these symbols was actually associated with Satanism due to Anton LaVey. In his book, The Satanic Bible, he actually associated one symbol in particular with the nine satanic statements. And that is what today is associated and known as the cross of Leviathan. Okay. The cross of Leviathan is also known as the cross of Satan. But what a lot of individuals don't realize is that this particular symbol is actually an alchemical symbol. Okay, it goes way, way back. I'm talking old school, as far back as the Knights of Templar. Okay, so I really want to point this out to you, and I found it interesting because of the fact that as an alchemical symbol, it actually represents sulfur. Okay. To Asia, it is known as brimstone. Okay. Now, to Christianity, we all know the story of Christianity. You know the JCI and their little lake of fire and brimstone. Okay, it is basically brimstone. Okay, fire, smoke, sulfur. Okay, the putrid smell. Okay, if you've ever smelled rotten eggs, that's basically what sulfur actually smells like. But sulfur can be used in a number of different alchemical methods. Okay. But what's interesting about this one symbol is that it's made up of two symbols. On one hand, you have what is known as the double cross. And on the other hand, you have the affinity symbol. Okay. The affinity symbol is basically the symbol of eternity. There is no beginning, no end. And it just goes on and say on again. Whereas the double cross is a symbolism of both creation and destruction. It is something that, when put together, you have a very powerful symbol that is associated with the mind and the elements. Okay. The seal of Saturn is associated with Satan and the abyss, demonic and the demonic influences. Okay. And this is why. Saturn is known in astrological terminology as being a dark planet. Okay, it is such a dark planet that no life supposedly can fit on it. It's one of the biggest gas giants in our solar system. Now, if you think about this, the ancient cultures would have seen this as a symbol for darkness, for the underworld, for Lucifer, or to Satan, Satanus, okay, Satanae in Latin, okay, or the home of the demonic, okay. Homer's Odyssey, for an example, would have associated this with the underworld. If you go all the way back into the old Astarte, Persephone, Proserpine, and Anna, you know, sulfur is associated with the underworld due to the fact that Not only is sulfur associated with the underworld, but here you have the underworld itself associated with a planet. And the alchemical symbol for this is an H with the stand looking like, or the base, the firm foundation looking like a cross. Okay, but that little lip has a curl in it when it gets into the H. And it's very interesting to see the different terminologies and the different uses for these symbols. For an example, when we look at the inverted pentagram, okay, the goat of Mendes is a 16th century terminology for this symbol, okay? The symbol itself, either verted or inverted, goes back hundreds of years, all right? It's associated with witchcraft going as far back as the 6th century BC, okay? That's before Christ era, okay? BCE, okay? That's long before that, okay? Before Christ, okay? A lot of people don't realize that. And it's interesting because this became associated around the time of the Church of Satan as being associated with devil worship. It became associated with Satanism as we know it today. However, when you look at paganism or Wicca, and you go back into the witch's creed or the witch's oath, the witch's pyramid to be precise, what happens when you make that 3D replica of that pyramid and you lay these points down on the ground? You actually have a pentagram, okay? Now, to pagans and Wiccans, the pentagram is a symbol of protection. However, for a Satanist and devil worshiper, this symbol represents equality between the practitioner and the devils. It's associated with symbolism of evil, okay? Especially from a Christian perspective. Mercury. Mercury is not just a planet, it's not just one of the zodiac planets, one of the 7 original planets from the ancestors' point of view. Mercury is also the most lightest metal known to man. What's ironic, though, is that as a symbol and a metal, this particular metal can literally and is literally the beginning stages of other metals, such as bronze, silver, and most importantly, gold. Okay? You've heard of the Philosopher's Stone, the alchemy version of transmortification. Okay? The changing of the individual from inside out. Okay? Now, the Philosopher's Stone has been associated and described in a lot of different manners, a lot of different objects, from a stone to a symbol, a ring, a chalice, a cup, or even a altar coin, if you wish. It's been described in so many different ways. However, when we go back into ancient alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone is actually a triangle. And with this symbol alone, it's broken down into numerous different symbols, geometric, or I should say not geometric, but more of a, actually, I guess you could say it, it's a geometric shapes, 3 distinct shapes, the triangle, the square, and the circle, okay, all in one. And from a Hermetic perception, or even a Kabbalistic perception, going as far back as alchemy goes, this symbol alone plays a huge part. And I'll tell you why. Not only is it the alchemical symbol for change, it links all other symbols together to be mastered through knowledge, through practice, and through intense study of self-mastery. And it's interesting because if you've ever heard the term that mastery begins with yourself, that you must master yourself to master the world. I mean, you consider even in philosophy, you got Marcus Aurelius, you got Sun Tzu in The Art of War, you got the Russian classic of War and Peace, which is more political, much like the um, the philosopher known as Marcus Aurelius. I mean, even when you get into Stoic, it's really amazing to see how many people throughout the ages have literally defined magic as beginning with you. It begins and ends with you. Therefore, you must master yourself to master the world. And it's very interesting to see this because when we get into the fifth elements, I mean, even when we get into the elements, earth, fire, air, and was it earth, water, air, and fire? Okay, the four basic elements, they all bring to the table a pillar of knowledge. Hermetic speaks of it. The Kabbalah speaks of it. The three books of occult philosophy speaks to the seven metals. It speaks to the 7 degrees of change and transmortification within you, as in the magi, the mage, the sage, the witch, or the warlock. But more so, even in the JCI, it speaks of the 5 pillars. When you get into the Quran, it speaks of the 5 pillars, the 5 pillars that go as far back as ancient Rome or ancient Egyptian, ancient Egypt, as in the first or second dynasty, to be precise. Which is ironic because when you get into the first dynasty, you're dealing with paintings. You're dealing with these, well, let's just call it the way they are, shrewd depictions of statues. Second dynasty, they became more refined. But by the time you get into the third dynasty, you're dealing with walls, you're dealing with pyramids, you're dealing with actual structures that are breathtaking. It's kind of like going back into ancient Greek where you're dealing with actual pillars surrounding buildings. You look at the Colosseum, for an example, or you go to the Leaning Tower of in Italy. Okay, same exact thing. It's at symbolism, and each one of these is a particular book of knowledge in itself to help you master certain things. But one of the biggest things that I've been noticing a lot lately on Facebook is the trident. It goes all the way back to Poseidon in ancient Greek, the ruler of the 7 seas. But more so, you're dealing with, again, the inverted cross. Okay? The inverted cross is nothing new. Okay? So why don't we start with this before I go into the trident? So you can actually get a better idea of the symbolism. According to the JCI, their savior was crucified by the Romans in Jerusalem, their most holy city. Just on the outskirts, I should say, really, up on the hill. He was crucified. But what's ironic is that when we get into, say, for example, Peter, St. Peter wanted to be crucified upside down, the inverted cross. Here, we see the first stage in a more occult setting, okay? A religious cult or movement that began all those years ago. Now, let's bring in the factor of Satanism. The inverted cross is now associated with evil. It's associated with devil worship, Satanism within all its denominations. That's right. I'm talking agnostic, I'm talking theistic, spiritual, traditional, and demonolators, and including Luciferianism. Okay? So you see where all that's going. But you really don't see much of the trident that often. I mean, you see it within certain government agencies from time to time, depending on which one you're looking into. You see it throughout history going as far back as these ancient myths and legends, such as Homer's Odyssey. But the main key thing that it's associated with is Poseidon. Nothing really before that. Not really much talk of it throughout the ages. So you see these two images come together today, and you're seeing a lot of it on Facebook. And this is coming into the form of the spirit, the spiritus in Latin. Okay. And it's associated with the soul, the spirit. Okay. So when we're looking at the pyramid, the triangle of the Philosopher's Stone, the triangle of evocation, as a lot of individuals know it today. That's right, the triangle. Even back in Eliphas Levi's day, the triangle was where the manifestation of a spirit first manifests itself. You go back to some of the old grimoires, such as the Constitution of Pope Honorius, or that of, say, the Grand Grimoire Red Dragon. Go back to, say, for an example, the Munich manuscripts, and you look up necromancy in general, okay? You're going to see the circle, what Wiccans and pagans refer to as the circle of protection. But you're also going to see that triangle of evocation where the spirit manifests. And there's a grist bag full of smelly herbs right in that triangle of evocation. This is the main picture when you look up necromancy on Google. And I want you to do this. I want you to look it up. Okay? Just go ahead and look it up. It's right there on Google. You can type in necromancy, and the first thing you do is you see a graveyard. You see two individuals standing in that graveyard within a circle. They're wearing monk's clothes. And then you have that triangle right there with the manifestation of a conjured spirit right there in that triangle of evocation. Okay? So here you have air, earth, fire, water, and now you're dealing with spirit. Okay? So the spirit or spiritus is now known as the essence. The essence of you. You. Not me, but you. Okay? Just like it is not you, but me. Okay? The essence of the individual. And it's very interesting to see how many people literally shy away from that. But when you get into the triangle, you have the square. The square is literally the depiction of a barrier. It's a protective barrier. But then you have the circle of empowerment. And that circle of empowerment makes up the third seal of the Philosopher's Stone. Within alchemy, within alchemy, very few out of all the books in my library, even at the local library and all the libraries that I've been to across this nation, I can tell you I have seen very few authors write about this one symbol. And ironically, one of the most notorious authors that wrote about the Philosopher's Stone is Raven Silverwolf within her book of Solitary Witchcraft. Very true. I mean, hell, even Raymond Buckland didn't even do that. And he talks about the diameters of the altar, but why not this? You know? So, I mean, there's a lot that's out there. There's a lot that is being corrupted and a lot that is being made into something it's not. So, I mean, this is why I tell you guys in just about every video that I do your own homework. Don't do it for me. Don't do it for your buddy, your girlfriend, or your preacher, or whatever the fuck you go to that's telling you bullshit lies. Go out there and do it for you. Okay? And I've always said, whatever you preach, back it up. Okay? I just back this shit up. And this is just in alchemy. And I brought in necromancy and Satanism and Christianity, Islam, even. Cultism. Wow. All these sources speak of just these few little symbols. Just these little bit of symbols. So why are people not paying attention? Why are people just believing the lies? Who knows? Maybe they just like having their heads in the proverbial sandbox. I don't know. All I can do is take care of myself. Educate, knowledge. You know, it's ironic because Anton Szandor LaVey once said, and this is also in the Nine Satanic Statements, by the way. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible. So if that's the case, why are you not taking responsibility for your own studies or the lack of? But it was also he who said as well that knowledge is power, and true power is undefined wisdom. Hmm. Ironic. Ironic. So go out there and do your own research for you. Have a good night. I'll be back on to do another video here in just a few minutes.